the commission. If you're not a member of the commission, we would ask that you turn off your video and your microphone. And when we get to public comment, we'll ask you to reverse that. But for the meantime, it allows the members of the commission to populate the screen so that we can see each other and who's voting and so on. So thank you so much for that. We're going to call the Cinco de Mayo meeting. Bob, settle down. Of the San Juan County Charter Review Commission to order. And with that, we will go straight into the minutes from the April 28th meeting. Are there any
Kevin, how about roll call?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Gosh. Thank you, Catherine.
You're
Let's do
welcome.
the roll call. Shaboom, Shash. Was anybody else a cheerleader? Never mind. I was a cheerleader.
Of course you were.
Yes. Roll call.
All right, Sharon.
Yeah.
David Anderson.
Here.
Bill.
Here.
Janet.
Here.
Kyle. David Dellendorf.
Here.
Paul.
Here.
Jane.
Oui, ici.
Patty.
Here.
Tony.
Tony's here.
Present.
Okay. Richard.
Here.
Liz.
Give me a P for present.
Bob.
Ah.
Kevin.
Arg.
I'll just say here, I was going to do something in Indonesian, but for the first time in decades, there's somebody who can correct my pronunciation. So
Olivia. Sorry, I had to let somebody in. Did I see Olivia?
Olivia's here.
Maureen.
Here.
Anne Marie.
Here.
And Tom.
Aquí.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tom. Okay, and just to remind folks, if you're not on the commission, if you could turn off your video and mute yourself, that'll allow the commissioners to populate the screen until we get to public comment. Thank you so much for that. So now we will go into the minutes from April 28th. Any edits or changes or issues with the minutes? And if not, I would accept a motion.
So moved to pass the minutes.
We have a motion by Jane and a second by Dave to adopt the minutes. All those in favor or any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition or abstentions? Okay, the minutes are approved or adopted. Town halls. So I just wanted to reiterate that we've now scheduled our town halls. They're going to be June 1st and 2nd at, is it 4 p.m.? No. Yes, 4 p.m.
Yeah, 4
So
p.m.
4 to 6 on June 1st and 2nd. Just want to get that on each of your calendars. At that point, sorry, Liz.
I thought one was in the afternoon, one was in the morning. Did I mistake that? 4 to 6 and then, no?
We did that last time, and what we've looked at now is a few things came up. One is we got complaints on both people who, which means we were probably doing it right. But there were people who were saying the morning didn't work, and the other thing was weekends did not work. People were saying, I'm really busy on weekends and so on. And so the other issue that came up was that for our schedule, we are so compacted that we just decided to do two. I think it's just a Monday, Tuesday. I can't remember now.
Tuesday, Wednesday.
Tuesday, Wednesday. So 2 weekdays in a row from 4 to 6, and we're just going to have to make it work.
Okay. No worries.
Yeah. Thank you for that clarification, though. Yeah, Patty.
If it's Wednesday from 4 to 6, aren't we already meeting on Wednesdays from 4 to 6?
Hopefully by then.
We'll be done. Oh,
I don't know if we will be
Okay.
done. I don't know if we will be done, but this would take the place of one of our meetings if it is in fact a Wednesday.
thank you for
I know we
that.
talked
Okay.
about that. The goal for this meeting will be, and this gets Patty to your point, for us to present to the public our final recommendations, because the following Tuesday we are now approved. We will be on the county council agenda on June 8th to
Okay.
present to the county council. And so it's not that we wouldn't have some edits, changes, and so on, and also want to consider any final public input. But in contrast to the previous town hall meetings, where we were really looking for input to influence our deliberations, this will be kind of the opposite. This will be us saying, okay, after our deliberations, here's our final amendments to the charter that we're proposing go to the ballot. And we want to be able to share those with the public in as close to a final form as possible. Yes, Jane.
Is there a time for the meeting on the 8th that we can record?
We have not been given a time yet. We're just on the agenda for the 8th. I don't know if we've been given a time yet. So,
Thank you.
and typically the county council's agendas fluctuate a little bit because different things will come up. And so there, and it's not a jab at the county council members by any means. It's always been this way because issues do arise that take more time than they considered. But it's kind of like a plumber where they tell you, we'll be there sometime between 9 and noon. And so I imagine that that's the sort of, we'll be on the agenda, and it will be sometime as close to that as they can manage.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on the town halls? I really just wanted to give a bit of an update there and make sure they were on everybody's calendars. Okay, great. So let's go straight into committee reports. And first we have the elections committee, who's going to be presenting to us their findings. And again, we are looking for action on this. So following the presentation, if there are recommendations from that subcommittee, which I know there are, for amendments to the charter, today's the day that we will be actually voting to adopt those amendments, or that those amendments go forward to the ballot. So with that, let's turn it over to our elections committee, and thank you so much for presenting today.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to share my screen. So here we go. And sorry that many of you will disappear from the screen, but this should be quick. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Yes.
Little thing.
I'm going to make it a little bigger. How does that sound?
Great. Great.
Okay, again, our committee, elections committee, our members are Jane, Sharon, Paul, and Tom. And we spent, did I miss some? Oh, and Dave and David. We spent a good amount of time discussing a few things, and we're happy to say that we were done a while ago. And basically our report is going to be very brief because we did not move many things forward. So let me just go down the list of these 7 items that we talked about. Okay. We discussed countywide or district-only elections for candidates for the CRC. We decided to leave it the way it is. We had a robust discussion because at the current level, the equivalence looks like it's about 1,000 inhabitants of the county to 1 CRC commissioner, and we felt that was okay for right now. We might change the charter to reflect those numbers, as opposed to say from 15 to 22 members. But we didn't discuss any of that. We felt that leaving it the way it is should be fine. And we voted on it. It passed unanimously to keep it the way it is. Mr. Chair, would you like me to go through all of these first? And then if there's any action, we can recommend action?
Yeah, I think that fits well, but I would, however works best for you and your presentation for the committee. So if that fits best, let's do that.
Okay, great. And I'd like to welcome the commissioners on the elections committee to chime in if there's something that I'm missing. So let's go to the number 2. This is county versus district elections for the county council. Again, we discussed a couple of different options. One was to have the council members being elected in their districts as opposed to for the whole county. We decided that the way it is now seems to work relatively well. Other than, the other option would be to go into a very large and much deeper discussion of the number of districts in the county. We just decided that let's leave it the way it is. The third item is age requirements for candidates for county council elections. We felt that the procedure, the way it is now, suggests that the county council candidates should be should be registered to vote in the county. We felt that's good enough. If they're registered to vote, that means they're 18 years or older. And if some young high school student wants to run for county council, more power to them. I know a few of them that could probably do a great job, but this is my own editorialization. I hope they're not running for council. They should be pursuing further education. But anyway, so that's number 3. Number 4, there was a question about the reference of in the charter, current charter, of residency districts versus legislative districts. We decided as a group that, and Paul, the commissioner that suggested this, we decided as a group that legislative gets very complicated or confusing because we are in the 40th legislative district in the state, and we are in the 2nd federal legislative district. So that legislative is used too often. So we decided just to leave it the way it is as residency districts. The 5th item is considering primaries for the CRC elections. We looked at the charter again. The charter is recommending that the CRC elections will not have any primaries. And the way the votes happened this last November seems to have worked fine. The top 3 vote getters from Lopez and the top 6 vote getters from Orcas and the top 9 from San Juan worked okay. So we'll just leave it the way it is. Ranked choice voting is a subject that came to us kind of in the middle of our 2 months period. We discussed it at length at our committee level. We had presentations from 2 members that talked about one side of the RCV, and another member read some information from another side of the RCV. We also talked to Mylene and Camelin from the elections department about their take. And we decided to, when the time came for the motion to move it forward, there was no second. So we felt that the motion died at the committee level, but obviously the CRC is going to be discussing this in further detail in the future. And our recommendation is that item I right there. Basically that it didn't come up for the vote, but if it's considered by the CRC, would like to hear sides. And the last item is a procedural item that presented by one of our commissioners, which is the process to monitor the election ballot from the time it's dropped in whatever depository it's dropped in to the time it gets to the elections office. And we felt that this was really not a charter amendment issue, but more of a procedural issue. So the member that recommended this, Tom, they presented some verbiage. So our recommendation here is to present this to the CRC to move forward to the elections department as a recommendation. And if there is to be any vote on one of these items, this would be the one that we would recommend voting upon. The others are, like I said, we kind of left them as they are. So, Mr. Chair, we can either use the 1 through 5 as a slate to vote to keep them as they are or not. Number 6 is something that's going to move forward regardless of what our committee was going to do. And I think the Charter Review Commission is already talking about number 6. And number 7 is something that we would recommend that it moves forward to the elections department. So your pleasure, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Tony, thank you very much for the presentation. If members don't disagree, I think that because I'm doing it again, Tony, I'm trying to scroll your screen.
What do you want me to do?
I'm on my cursor. I'm like, why is it not moving? That's fine. Thank you. I was just going to say with numbers 1 through 6, because they are all non-action items, or 1 through 5, let's keep 6 separate for now. And I will comment on that. 1 through 5, because they are non-action, what I would ask is there's no action required or no action being requested of the subcommittee by the full CRC. But I would ask on just numbers 1 through 5, if there are any questions or concerns or any issues that people would like to raise. And I'm sorry, I can't see everybody's hands with the screen.
Jane has a hand up.
I just,
Tony, Jane, please.
thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Tony. I just wanted to, just for a little bit of further clarification regarding item 6, that is not what Kevin just asked us to talk about, but I just felt for clarification, this is important, is that the motion that was presented by Sharon was presented on the basis of having received information as a committee from Sharon about RCV, given her knowledge of RCV because of her knowledge of Fair Vote Washington for many years now. And then also a few of us on the committee sort of did our own web research and looked into it a little bit in a very lay manner in terms of not being experts on RCV, but just looking at what was on the internet. And then we also invited, as Tony correctly said, we invited Marlene Henley to speak to us, as well as Camelin Armstrong from the elections office. As a member of the committee, I would like to clearly state that on the strength of the information provided by Marlene and Camelin Armstrong, I did not feel comfortable with seconding the motion that was put before us by Sharon to bring this issue to the full commission, but also recognize that we didn't have the benefit of a presentation from any experts on RCV, and I felt that was necessary. And so I asked Tony as chair, in lieu of having this motion being seconded, and I don't think it would have passed if it did come to a vote, but I can't say for sure because it didn't come to a vote. I asked Tony if we could request that Fair Vote Washington speak to the full CRC. And Tony, I imagine Tony communicated that to Kevin, and that's why we had Fair Vote Washington speak to us. So I think it's just important that the public understands, because I know that one member of the public in a previous meeting appreciated knowing that there was a reason it didn't pass out of the committee. And so I don't feel we had enough information with which to make a fully informed decision on this matter. So thank you. I just wanted the opportunity to share that information. Thank you, Tony.
Welcome.
Since we're back on number 6, what I will say is under new business this evening, so at the end of the meeting, and one slight correction, it's not back on our agenda yet. More than 5 members, I believe, have notified me via email that they are interested in coming up for a full discussion of the full CRC. We've not taken that vote yet, but I believe that vote will pass, and then we will put it on a future discussion as a future discussion item on an agenda coming up at a future meeting. So with that, let's go back to 1 through 5. Thank you, Tony. Are there any questions or issues or any discussion points, anything anybody wants to raise on any of those issues?
Mr. Chair, I know you can't see everybody. Kyle has a question.
Please, Kyle, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Gazelle, on number 3, could you remind us, I should remember this and I don't, what was the proposed change potentially to the age requirement?
Thank you, Commissioner Kyle. This is a good point. What our question here was, should there be a age minimum limit on running for county council? We debated between 18 and 21. We finally decided that there really wasn't a need because the requirement to run for county council, one of the requirements is that you have to be a registered voter in San Juan County. And what that by default means that you're at least 18 years old. And we decided not that 21 would be a limitation. We felt that the public would, if somebody wants to run out of high school for a council member, then more power to them. So that's what's that issue. I hope I answered your question.
You did. Thank you.
Bob O'Connell
I have a question of Commissioner Gazelle.
Please.
That sounds perfectly reasonable to me, Commissioner. But what do we do if the folks come along in Olympia, as I've heard consideration in other states, and lower the voting age to 16, say, and allow people at age 16 to vote? Do we still want to? We'll be locked into the. Do we still want people to be able to come onto the council at that age? I suppose the council could at that point do its own charter amendment, but there you go. What about that?
Good. May I respond, Mr. Chair?
Please.
Thank you, Bob. That's a good one. And I told our committee for my many years on the school board, I've met a bunch of 16 and 17-year-olds that could really do a great job as elected officials. So why not? You know, if the public wants that position to be a 16-year-old, why not?
Okay.
Other
Thank you.
other questions for Tony or any other members of the committee? Okay. Wonderful. I have one thing I would add on number one. I originally brought this up. And one of the issues that arose for me, which actually my election as chair is kind of defeats my argument. But one of the things that came up for me is that in the charter, it says that the chair and who will also do the organizing of the first meeting, but no, Jane, I wrote it first. Anyway, this gives weight to San Juan Island currently, at least as far as population. San Juan Island has about 50% of the county's population. So by default, no matter what, according to the way this election works, and then the other language in the charter, the first chair of every charter will be from San Juan Island. And I spoke to Randy a little bit about this too. And it's not a hill to die on by any means. I just wanted to raise that one of the other rationales around this was not just the distribution of voters equal. That never even crossed my mind. It was more that we are by default saying that San Juan County will begin the charter process every time. And that's going to continue with the way this is structured. That said, it's not that we don't have incredible people like Maureen who will step up and help guide that process to get us started. But it is something to consider in the future.
Well, we could, if I may answer with that, we could actually change it to be the largest percentage of vote getters. In this case, it'll be Jane out of Lopez to run
Yes, it
the
would.
first meeting. So
Well, that's not what this says though. So
I know.
that would be another change. Yes, that would be another way to do it. So Bob has a question.
No, that was it.
Oh.
I was going to point out that it would have been Jane in the circumstances. Obviously, no one, not even Jane, could do a better job than Maureen, but there you go.
I totally agree, Bob.
I have a little comment.
Please.
That first person who does all the organizing, which is really hard, does not necessarily become the chair, as you know.
Yeah,
So-
no, that's what I was saying. My election as chair actually
Yeah.
defeated part of my argument for this. So, I should just shut up, which you guys probably think quietly all the time.
All right.
Are there any other questions regarding this presentation?
Mr. Chair, I have a point to make.
Yeah, please.
One little detail that wasn't mentioned is that candidates for the CRC not only must be registered voters, must have been registered voters for 5 years. So even if it goes to 16, this person will be 21.
Yeah. Excellent point, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Tony, I believe there was one action that your subcommittee was asking for, and it's a recommendation to the auditor, not the county council, but to the auditor. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. To the elections office to consider this process of observing the county election ballots. We have some hands up, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. So go ahead. Who's got their hand up here? I'll just go to it.
I do.
Please go ahead, Dick.
My question is, what's the reasoning behind this recommendation? Is there is there evidence of some problem at those phases? It just seems a bit onerous to me.
Thank you, Dick. Let me, if Tom is available, may I suggest that Tom respond to that? If you're okay, Tom, with that, responding?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to. I've had the dubious distinction of being the chairman of the Republican Poll Watchers Committee. And by and large, things work pretty well. The staff generally keeps us posted and certainly posts a schedule of all the mailbox openings, the drop box open, the ballot box openings, and when the counting teams are going to be there. But they schedule, and they put that in a schedule that we all understand and set up our volunteers. But then we learn that there's certain days the counting is continuing and we don't know about it. Or ballot or the drop box on Lopez is being unloaded and we don't have an observer there. So, you know, talking to the staff about it, they are busy. She says, sometimes I'm just too busy to notify you. Well, we don't think that's good enough. And so we are requesting that this process be observable all the way through. And if there's a change or something, that we give you a phone number and give us an hour's notice to get somebody there. And so it just needs to be enforced a little bit better. And so we're urging the election staff to be more aware of our wanting to observe. So that's kind of the genesis of it, Dick.
But Tom, you're if I can follow up, you're only applying this to the people who become certified poll watchers?
Yes, oh definitely. And we would give Camelin a phone number if there's a change or a schedule or a drop box pickup that's not on the schedule. Please give us a call and we'll do everything we can to get somebody there. Give us an hour. There's other problems to do with just the physical layout of that little house that they're in. We can only get so many people in their counting room, which is the size of my dining room. And sometimes there's stuff going on in there that would be good to be able to look at, but we just can't get in there. We have to stand in the doorway and observe. So those are just physical limitations that we're trying to live with. But we just want to be notified of the activities.
Bob, and then Jane.
I think obviously it's super important, especially now in this day and time, that both parties and everybody, the entire citizenry, feel very confident in how their elections are conducted. And for that reason, I'm going to move the adoption of this amendment.
Okay, is there a second?
It's not an
second.
amendment. It's
Yeah, I was
not
saying,
an
is
amendment.
this an amendment
is
or
it?
recommendation?
Sorry, it is not an amendment. It is a recommendation to
Thank
the
you.
county auditor.
Oh, we're not, I see. We're not suggesting this is a change to the charter.
No. We wouldn't have that authority. This would
Okay.
this is clearly under the jurisdiction of the auditor. So just to remind folks, before we clarify if there's a second to what will need to be a little bit amended motion. One of the things that we've recognized other counties have done in their charters is where they haven't had authority, but they've uncovered something that they think should be addressed. They've made recommendations to other entities to say, hey, you might want to take a look at this. So that's all this is.
That's right.
Well, in that case, I move acceptance of this recommendation.
I second it.
Okay, and that was, yeah, okay. And then I see Jane's hand was up.
Yeah, I was just gonna, and I did mention this to Tom Starr, Commissioner Starr, in one of our elections committee meetings, but the counting of the ballots is something that's recorded online in that room. And so I actually observed the counting of the ballots online during the November election. And so which would somewhat negate the necessity of people physically being in the room. But that's a minor issue. I just wanted to mention that because I did mention it before.
Okay. Any other comments on the motion on the floor?
Kevin?
Kyle has his hand up.
Kyle, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Actually,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Liz has had her hand up for a while.
Okay, thank you so much, guys. Liz and then Kyle.
So my hand was up regarding item number 1. And I just also wanted to clarify, we should loop back to that. Right now, the motion has to do with item 7 only. Is that correct?
That's right. So I'll come back to you, Liz. Sorry, I didn't see your hand earlier. Kyle?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question actually doesn't really relate to the vote, but they're giving information. There's a line in here, giving information to all parties, chairperson, person or persons. This is a naive question, but if there is a third or fourth recognized federal party or more, is it a requirement that that party have a local committee, and by extension, does that committee have to have a chairperson? I mean, I'm not going to take issue with the language, but I mean, it seems to suggest that the information about ballot movements goes first to a party chairperson. I haven't heard this before. Does the question make sense?
Yes. And off the top of my head, I'd say you actually make a really good point, because in the past we have actually had vacancies in a chairperson too. You could say the party's designee instead of chairperson. And
Yes, then that would be a friendly amendment.
Yeah, I was going to say, if somebody wants to put that forward as a friendly amendment, I think that would make sense. If the maker of the motion is okay with that too.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Tom, you brought this forward too, or you're okay with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, just a designated person would be fine.
Okay. Any other comments on this motion? Okay, I would call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Any abstain?
I'm abstaining.
Is that Dick Rout is abstaining?
Yeah.
The chair votes in favor. So the motion carries. Okay, we're gonna go back to Liz on, and then we'll go to Paul.
Back to item number 1, I'm just wondering if the recommendation that it be based on the person who gets the highest percentage of votes would be more representative government.
I think it would. Right now, the recommendation from the subcommittee was to do nothing. That does not negate us discussing it though. So if that's a recommendation that others were in support of, that could be a motion.
And Kevin, I think you were the one whoever made that comment, I was agreeing that made sense to me, that whoever gets the highest percent, wherever they are, should be that person.
And you're saying percentage of their district.
Yes.
How do others feel about that?
I disagree.
I agree.
That's the San Juan Islander.
Now, let me say,
I'm sorry.
I am not trying to keep the acting chair on San Juan Island, but with that proposal, we would be taking the smallest voting block in the county and saying the percentage, basing on percentage on that way. That's completely unrepresentative.
May I respond?
Yeah, Liz, and then I'll go to, who was it? Paul, and then Patty, and then David.
So Commissioner Grout, I agree with you, but it appears to me that both ways are unrepresentative. Is there an alternative that we could muster?
Make the Charter Review Commission elected at large. Dick, did you want to respond to that, and then I'll go to Paul?
No, I was just trying to put my hand down.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, Kevin, it's just a procedural thing that I mentioned to you before. When we have a vote of the entire commission, I would recommend instead of a voice call, that we have an actual hand raised and it's counted by you and then somebody else verifying that count. And I think it's very important from now on that we specify that.
Yeah, Paul, thank you for raising that. That is why we were still sharing the screen, and so I couldn't see everybody. But that is why I verbally said out loud that everybody voted in favor except for Richard Grout, who abstained from the election, from the vote. So I verbally stated that, so that was recorded. And my intention, Paul, and Paul and I did, and he raised this earlier, and I think it's a really good point, which is that we make sure, particularly going forward, because we're probably going to have some mixed votes going forward, that more than one person is counting how many hands are up and such. And then what I have said is that I will verbally state the vote too, so that if anybody's like on that last vote, if somebody else had voted no and I didn't catch it, when I say everybody voted in favor except for Dick Grout who abstained, somebody would have said, no, I disagree. So Paul, sorry, we were sharing the screen, so I couldn't see everybody. And also with only one abstention, I thought it was okay to verbally say that. But okay, hang on, Tony, I'm going to get to you in a moment. So I have Patty, and then David, and then Tony.
Yep, Kyle.
I just wanted to say for this first position, the person, I'm so happy that Maureen took it over because she had experience from the past commission. And I think that was vitally important, but it seems like it's a difficult thing to do, to try getting everybody together and organize that first meeting where the chair is then elected. I think it's almost an onerous position, but the person who gets the most votes, at least it's somewhat of an honor. But it's not an easy position to do. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, Patty. I mean, no, sorry, David.
I lower my hand. I
Okay.
pass. Thank you.
Okay, Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Could they mute?
I'm sorry?
Somebody, Olivia, is that you?
Olivia.
Okay. Could you
Olivia.
mute, please? Sorry.
Sorry.
I can hear your keyboard.
Thank
Okay.
you, Mr. Chair. Kind of a matter of procedure. I think we did not, as an elections committee, we did not consider section 9.2 item D, 1D, because that's the item that's actually being considered right now, which is the who leads the first meeting. That was not even on our horizon to discuss. So we did not discuss that. So we have no recommendation either way. What we discussed was the possibility of having a district-wide, which is actually item 9.2, section 9.2, item 1A. That's what we kind of focused on. So if we're voting, we're discussing that. I don't know if we want to discuss the percent or the total number of votes who leads the first meeting. I'm not sure if that's really something that we did not discuss that.
Thank you very much, Tony. So and I apologize if it was out of line. I brought that up because in my original writing, and it sounds like maybe Jane proposed this issue too. But when I originally proposed this, I had 3 bullet points in what I put forward. And one of the bullet points was the point that I just raised. So I only raised that because in your presentation, which obviously if you didn't discuss it, it wasn't on your agenda. So I just wanted to raise that the original motivation for me putting this forward, one of those issues you hadn't touched upon. So I was just raising it. So I have Kyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, on the hand vote on item 7 to Bob's proposal, I did vote also with Commissioner Grout to abstain.
Oh, good. Thank you. So even more important that Paul raised that point. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Kyle. Okay. As the person who David, I see your hand up again. Go.
Yeah, no, I agree with Tony. Don't we have to limit these discussions to what the various subcommittees have actually either recommended or considered and not recommended? Because if we're going to open up these meetings to bringing up new subjects that weren't even part of the agenda of any of the subcommittees, we're going to get potentially bogged down. So I think you have to kind of make a procedural decision. So as I think Tony suggested.
Well, Tony was almost suggesting that, but Tony suggested it to me in the past. What I was going to say is, as the person who raised this topic, I'm fine with it as is. I think the committee's made a good recommendation. I do think that it was very important under this current topic to raise the point that as the maker of that issue for the subcommittee to discuss, one of my main motivations obviously wasn't even discussed by the subcommittee, which actually is a bit concerning. And to your point, David, this commission, the full commission, can discuss anything it wants. However, we have already put in place a procedure, and that procedure was voted on 2 meetings ago. So if this were to go further, because as Tony pointed out, technically it wasn't part of their discussions, I would ask if 5 members of this commission wanted to discuss it further, if it was going to keep going, and then we would put it on a future agenda item, which I was just about to recommend. But actually what I wanted to say is the person who brought this up, is I'm fine with it as is. I do not think this is a big enough issue for us to spend more time on at this point. I think it's important to realize why the issue was originally brought up, and I think we've done that. Bob, and then I'll go back to David.
If it helps for somebody from the friendly aisle, the little place, to chime in, if this were a matter of the chairman being appointed this way, the chairman for the whole thing, I would tumble about it. Chairperson, I'm sorry. Thank you, Jane. I would tumble about it, but it's not. It's a short thing. So let's just forget it. I don't think we have 5 people anyway. Let's just move on.
I totally agree. David.
And I agree to move on too, but it's a precedent that we've been talked about it. The 5-to-1 vote, Kevin, does not apply in this case because there was not a discussion and a decision. That's bringing up new subjects that aren't part of any of the presentations by the subcommittee is a whole different category. And the 5 vote, not 5-to-1, excuse me, but the 5 votes is not applicable to a situation like this.
Sorry, Commissioner, I disagree. Every member of this commission is an independently elected official and can raise an issue. For it to take significant time on the agenda, we put in place a procedure which would say that 4 other commissioners would have to say, yes, I want that to take place. I want to have more discussion on that. And then we would place it on a future agenda item. As I said a moment ago, I wanted to raise the original point because in Tony's presentation, he didn't raise it. And now he has shared with me that that wasn't even part of, that for some reason never got on their agenda, which is okay for all the reasons that we've discussed. I think it's time to move on though, because I don't even think there's 1 vote to consider this. So let's just move on, if that's all right.
Agreed.
Everybody? Awesome. Okay. So I think that's it then, Tony, for your committee's presentation. Thank you very much. And again, on that last vote, that Kyle Davies and Richard Grout both abstained from the vote, and the rest of the commission voted in favor of a recommendation to the county auditor to put in place the procedures that were put forward originally by Commissioner Tom Starr. And thank you for those, Tom. I think that's actually a really, really good suggestion. Tony, please.
Just a kind of final thing on this, Mr. Chair. I really want to again loudly amplify that the members of our committee was very engaged, and I'm really thankful to have had the opportunity to work with such committed folks and a rich discussion that followed. So really good committee. Still the best committee of the charter.
Well, Tony, I think you put forward some excellent discussion, and also obviously did your homework too. The number of recommended changes to the amendment does not necessarily parallel the amount of good work that was done. So thank you very much. Okay, we are going to move into a presentation from the Governance Committee. And so we'll turn that right over to our lead for the Governance Committee, and you can get started. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, I do want to thank the committee, that the commissioners that came together. It was an amazing group of people, and often there are sparks coming from my computer, just the electricity of all the conversation we're having. Sharon Abreu joined us early, Janet Brunel, David Dellendorf, Commissioner Jane Fuller, Tony Cazell, Dick Grout, and we're lucky to have the vice chairman and the chairman of our committee, or commission, Olivia Roseberry and Kevin Ranker. So I definitely want to thank every one of you for contributing to what was a great conversation. May I share my screen? Or can I share my screen? Let's see. Here we go.
You should be able to.
Okay. Is it? I get there. There we go. So we had quite a few issues brought to us by the commission, full commission, and we execute them as well as we can. There are 4 issues that we decided that we'd like to bring to the full commission to vote on. One issue, we have not finished all the work. We have one issue that we're going to have a hearing hear about on Thursday. Hopefully we can find some time later if that passes our committee. And there is a list of issues that we have at the very bottom of this that we did not get a chance to talk about, but we can bring forward to you in a second here. Starting off, we looked at the composition of the council. We felt it is missing 2 places. The reference that the council's existing executive authority, as written, if it only refers to the council's existing legislative authority. It was felt that we need to add an executive authority to sections 2.10 after the legislative authority at the beginning of both the first and second sentences. We felt that the change was necessary to make the section 2.10 consistent with the existing section 2.31, where the executive powers and the duties of the county council. Shall we go, since these are amendments, should we discuss them right now, or should we just go through all of them?
Dave, can I,
Chair.
this is Janet.
Yeah.
Can I just add, we did get some input from Randy Gaylord on all of this, and I don't know if you want to include his input into this.
I am fine to do that. Let's see. Do we have it here?
You could also, Randy is attending the meeting this evening, as he usually does. If you want, you could also go through your presentation and then ask him. I'd be happy to include him in any responses or comments.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, that's fine if we not vote on them now, and we'll just run through them. And then when he can offer his comments later. Okay.
That sounds great.
Right.
That's better.
Right, thank you. Moving on, it is unclear that the first sentence of section 4.10, the composition of administrative departments, which the county departments are included in the definition of administrative departments, do they include departments managed by the elected officers? It is proposed that we replace the first sentence of the existing section 4.10 with administrative departments as listed on the county website shall include the county manager and all other departments, offices, and agencies not managed by independently elected officials. In the public interest to create accuracy and to avoid confusion. Then we also looked at miscellaneous appointments. We felt that dealing with the boards, commissions, and committees, that there is missing a provision necessary to make appointments, the appointing process transparent, and we wanted to address diversity and priorities. So what we chose to do is, the language is quite fresh, so I'll just read the language we have, what we want to put into the charter. The county council by action shall publicly discuss and appoint or reject all applicants for boards, committees, and commissions by public vote except as otherwise provided in the charter. All applicants shall be notified of their accepted application. Once appointed, all applicants will be provided notice of their appointment and education regarding their duties and responsibilities, including on matters of justice, equity, inclusion, and diversity. Any citizen not appointed shall be notified. The county council shall work to ensure that all boards, committees, and commissions maintain a diversity of membership that is representative of minority populations, sexual orientations, age, gender, and gender identification. So that was brought up for to clarify the onboarding process into our committees and to and also make sure that we have diversity on these committees. And then also in section 7.20 in regarding budget information, who is responsible for the management of the budget process and the relative roles of the auditor and the county manager. And at the beginning, we suggest of section 7.20, the auditor shall be responsible for initiation and preparation of budget. Auditor shall do so in consultation with the county manager. And we thought that since the county manager oversees and uses 60% of the budget, that person should have their contribution into the budgeting process. And this is something that is done now. We're lucky that those two positions work well together. It is done in other counties. And so we want to make sure that this process continues this way. We just want it clarified in how our county is operating. So, and we'll be looking this next Thursday at an issue dealing with sustainable tourism. And I'm not going to talk about that right now because we don't have it finalized of what we're hoping to propose possibly to the full commission. So that is what we have forwarded as proposed amendments to the charter. And if we would like to keep going, we have a list of issues that we discussed at length, a lot of them, but decided not to move forward after as a proposed amendment. Shall I continue with the list of things we discussed but did not move forward, Mr. Chair?
So I'm going to suggest, and please weigh in, members of the commission, and let me know, but what if we take the items where recommended action is being put forward and discuss those now, and then go into the the items that were discussed but do not have a recommended action afterward. But before we dive into commission discussion, ask Randy to weigh in, because I know that he supplied us with a really thoughtful memo on a lot of these today. And I don't know if folks have had an opportunity to read it yet. But I think, Randy, if it's okay with you, I think it might be timely to have you comment on a few of these recommended actions before we go into discussion. How do commissioners feel about that? I'm seeing some thumbs up. I see a hand, Maureen.
Kevin, I have a question.
Kyle and Maureen and Patty have questions.
Well, I have questions about one of your recommended amendments. Shall I wait?
Yes, please, just so that we can decide upon the process.
Okay.
So Patty, is this on process?
I was just, well, yes, I was
Yeah.
just going to say, I would appreciate at least going through all of the things that were not going to be discussed, basically, so we could see them. And then if there's somebody later on that wants to bring them up, they can bring their 5 people to you. But at least we won't have to worry about them being there later.
Yeah, and Patty, are you suggesting that we do that before we discuss?
Before your discussion, get it out of the way.
Okay, good. Kyle?
I agree with that. And for Randy or any other guest's part, can we share the whole screen or unshare the screen?
Yes. Yeah, I was gonna recommend that too. So, okay, so why don't, Dick, did I hear your voice?
Yes, I'm just going to say, I don't want to complicate life, but I disagree with that. I would rather hear from Randy on the 4 issues that are being put forward and then talk about the others.
Patty?
If I may say, I wasn't really going to talk about them, just note them that they were in the committee and not to have discussion on them since they're not being brought forward. But this will show what the committee did have in case there's somebody out there that wants to bring it forward to the commission later. That's all I was doing. Get them out of the way.
I'm fine with that also.
Okay, Jane?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say that when Randy does share his comments on these, there's going to be one of his comments that I think it would be helpful for us to be able to respond to for clarification for the full commission, and that's on the issue of diversity. So I would just ask Mr. Chair that when Randy shares with us his his take on these suggested amendments, there be an opportunity for that one particular one for us to provide some further clarification as a committee, because we haven't yet had a chance to have that interaction with Randy.
Of course, of course.
Okay, thank
So
you.
what I'd like to recommend is this, is that we wait to go through the recommended items until after the discussion. And we just go into the discussion now so that we can have that and we can begin with Randy commenting on these. Is that okay with folks?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, so let's do that. Patty, sorry, I'm just.
Okay, I just wanted to get him out of the way.
I
Yeah, me too,
understand.
me too.
I'm hoping it will still be quick afterward. So let's dive into these, but let's begin. Maybe we can stop sharing the screen. And Randy, are you prepared to give us some comments on your memo and thoughts on these recommendations? Thank you, Randy.
Okay. So I'll just dive right into the material I sent you earlier today. There's a 6-page memorandum that we worked on since we received these. These are things that came to mind were issue spotting as we go through these topics for the first time. So let's talk about section 2.10, and we've restated the section in underlined strikeout format, so it's very easy to see how it looks or would look as changed in section 2.10. And what the proposal is to add the words "and executive authority," legislative authority and executive authority. What you know is that the county council is named in section 2.10 and identified as the legislative authority. And we also know they have executive powers. But under the charter, executive powers are divided. It's not only with the county legislative authority, which has the executive powers, but executive powers are also granted to other elected officials in Title III. So, so there isn't a true one group that has executive authority. All of these elected officials have some executive authority, and it's divided. So they aren't the executive authority. And so what we do is we talk about legislative authority because that is the term of art used in the Constitution, as well as almost all the statutes that deal with this group of three, whether they're called council in many of the charter counties or commissioners in the code counties. They're referred to as legislative authority by the state legislature when referring to this group. And so we're identifying them, we're naming who they are, and we're recognizing them. And so that's all the purposes of section 2.10. It's correct that they do have a great deal of executive power and all of the residual executive power, not granted to the other elected officials. And so there's that all exists as a matter of law, and it's spelled out in executive 3.10. And so it the change there, see, is it a change? No, that's already existing in section 2.30 as written. It says executive powers are vested in the county council as named. So that's why I suggest a change, not including that. Questions on that topic? Yes, David.
David.
Yeah, this was my suggestion because the section, the article on the county council, which is when if somebody wants to determine by reading the charter, what is the county council responsible for? The first words they read are the legislative authority of the council shall consist of 3 members. And it kind of says, okay, that's all it. That's it. It's the legislative power. There's no executive power. You have to look later on and know what you're looking for to find that. I do understand, Randy, what you said about its divided executive powers. So why couldn't you just say the legislative authority of the county and those executive powers responsible to or that are the responsibility of the county council? So it makes it clear that it's not all of them, those that are, and you might even make reference to as enumerated in section 2.31. Just so somebody who starts reading this thing knows exactly what is going on rather than just being misled, which I think is the case when it just starts out with only the legislative authority.
So there's more than one way to skin a cat, but what I would say is that the way it's written right now is perfectly clear to me.
But it's not inclusive. It's clear, but it's not inclusive. It doesn't say anything about the executive authority. In this
No, you just
particular
have to move
sentence.
to another section to
I know.
to
but-
get there. Yeah, it
I know.
doesn't say about legislative powers and it doesn't talk about powers. Section 2.10 is about name, who they are. And the name arises from the Constitution. It flows down through the statutes in here. What do we call them? And it says we call them the county council, and it's made up of county council members.
I saw Tony's hand.
I was going to say, Mr. Chair, thank you. It's clear to me, David, that it says what it does. I don't think there's any ambiguity that the legislative power is the 3 council members or the county council.
Any other questions or comments on this particular subject before Randy moves on to the next recommendation? Thanks. Randy, go ahead.
The next section, 4.10, talks about, and that's laid out in underlined strikeout format in our memorandum. That's fine language. There's no problem with that. It strikes out language that the county council may deem necessary, such additional departments as the county council may deem necessary. I think you ought to keep that language in. It's okay the way it is. And my advice to you is this: you remove it, but it doesn't deny the county council the ability to divide its organization up as it sees fit.
That's right.
Okay, you're not taking away that power from them by striking this language here. They have that power. It's innate to them. As part of their executive function, they have that authority.
Any questions or comments on this section for Randy? Randy, I will say that we actually had that discussion, that by striking this language, it did not change their authority by any means. We just felt that it wasn't necessary because it was already understood that they had that authority.
Yeah, it's a confirmation of existing authority. I would agree with that.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next one.
The next one deals with the miscellaneous appointments to committees and so on by the legislative authority, the county council. And there are 2 parts of that. One is this administrative function of promptly sending notes. The word used is immediately. And my suggestion there is that you use the word promptly.
Yeah.
I think it's a preferred term generally. Immediately may not ever happen fast enough, and it creates difficulty. Promptly has a little more room to move. The second thing was we had this language establishment of diversity provision consistent with the recommendation of the Justice and Equity Subcommittee. And my comment there was I had not seen any diversity provision yet to review or comment on. And so I was unable to provide full advice in connection with that. And my recommendation was that if this is going to stand as a single proposition and the diversity and equity matter was going to stand as a separate proposition, that you try to avoid one proposition referring to another, because these are propositions that are going to be single subject propositions and they may not both pass. And if they do not pass, you do not want language that will cause a problem. I call it orphaned language in my memorandum. It's language that sits there but doesn't have a parent to match up to. That is the other measure. So my recommendation is, if you're going to have that occur, include it in the diversity provisions or whatever measure is put in that subject of the diversity measure. You can add an amendment to this section at that time. Question.
Jane?
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, Randy. And yeah, I did have a chance to look at your recommendations there. And so we're a little out of sync here in terms of the work on our respective subcommittees, right? So totally agree with what you're saying needs to happen. And so I think what we would appreciate doing is once we have finished the work that we're doing that we can share with you, we want to circle back with you on that recommendation so that we ensure that what we're proposing as amendments vis-a-vis a non-discrimination clause is indeed, simpatico, so to speak, with what's being referred to there. So it's sort of, this is still a work in progress, basically. That's kind of the point. Thank you for the flagging that, though.
We're happy to help you with that. I just wouldn't include it at this time. I would include it at the other time. And well, the general rule is single subject is within the same article. If the same subject finds its way in different provisions and different articles of the charter, it's allowable as a single subject still. Okay, so that's going to be allowable under the single subject rule.
Okay, so thank you. Yeah, we'll have to refer back to you on that for sure. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. Randy, thank you for that second clarification. That was a question I had.
Yeah, you and I talked about that earlier. So
exactly. Yeah.
Next thing deals with the budget information, and here, what you want to do is perfectly fine. It's largely the way things are being done today. I just suggested tightening the language, and what I did is I referred to the same language that's in the statutes concerning these obligations and the language of the Constitution that talks about vesting powers in other administrative officers. And at what steps is it that the auditor is responsible for the budget, and what do we call that? Well, what we do is we call that thing that all of us submit as elected officials and department heads to get the budget process started. We call those estimates. And then the next step is to prepare a preliminary budget. And that is I think it's those steps of soliciting the estimates, getting the budget started, sending out the budget message, preparing the preliminary budget. Those are all the steps you want the auditor to do. And then at some point in time, she's going to have to coordinate with the county manager. So I put it in that she does all of those in consultation with the county manager, all as part of one sentence. So we know that all of those steps are done in consultation with each other. And then it's the final budget that follows from after the preliminary budget and after public hearings. The auditor assists in the revision of the preliminary budget, and then the final budget's adopted by the county council.
Thank you. Any questions for Randy on that subject? Seeing none.
Then the last thing was concern the lodging tax spending. I'm not sure we're really ready to talk about that.
Yeah.
I know there was, and I think you're going to wait till a meeting tomorrow, so maybe I'll just hold off on that and wait and talk to you about that later.
That was my understanding as well, Randy, that it needed a little more subcommittee conversation and maybe more dialogue with you too. So I don't anticipate action on that tonight by any means.
All right.
Thank you.
Questions, Mr. Dellendorf?
No, I just like this. I agree with you, Randy, in principle about the Visitors Bureau, the lodging tax issue. But could we possibly be on the wrong track completely? I mean, if it might be helpful to know that this really isn't.
So, David,
have any chance. Yeah.
David, this is Janet. Randy and I have been talking about it today. So if you could just wait until tomorrow so I could fill you in on a more informed conversation, that would be that'd be great. Can we just table it for tonight and then talk about these 4 other things?
Yeah. If there's any questions for Randy on the other 4, and Kyle, I'm going to go to you in a second. Dick Grout, you had your hand up earlier. Was it on this subject?
I put it down. It was not on this subject.
Is it a point for Randy though that you want to raise now?
No.
Okay. I'm sorry I missed you earlier. I'll circle back to you. Kyle?
Also not a question for Mr. Gaylord. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Randy at this point? Okay, we're going to go to Maureen and then Dave.
Okay. So at part of the operations, subcommittee, we have put together, Randy, a non-discrimination statement that applies to boards, commissions, and committees. And I've read it to our commission here, and it's already been posted on the website, so I don't know whether you've seen it or not, but Amy has gone through it. Can you hear me?
I can, but I did not consider that in connection with this activity today.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
And is that being worked on through the Justice and Equity Committee?
No, it's through operations. And it's separate. And I'd be happy to send you all of that. And you can just
Yeah, why
have a
don't you
look
send
at
that to me?
Okay.
And Randy, that brings up a point, and Jane, I'll get to you after Dave, that there's several committees discussing similar topics. And so I think what Jane was trying to share earlier is there's just some out of syncness, is that a word, happening that we're trying to sync to also not just make it easier for you, but for the public when they're looking at these things too. And so I think literally over the next coming days, a lot of this will start to come together, and then you'll get a more flushed out kind of, here's how this relates to this. So, because on that last one you raised, I saw that in our committee and our subcommittee as a placeholder. The reference to justice and equity, it was just a placeholder kind of saying that's coming. So Dave and then Jane.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. Thank you, Randy, for providing this great analysis and so quickly. We really appreciate it. It's very constructive. So I appreciate your office doing that.
Thanks, Dave. Happy to help out.
Jane and then Bob.
Mr. Chair, I defer to Bob and Tom. Their hands were up prior to mine. I'm happy to wait.
Okay, Bob and then Tom and then Jane.
I have two motions. The first motion is that we reject number 2 as a possible amendment. And my second motion is that we accept number 4.
We're going to do one motion at a time.
Okay.
And also I would say that we've got to say more than number 2 because we're not
All
sharing
right.
the screen right now or anything. So
Okay, it's the one, number 2 is the one where we add executive authority to the section that does not appropriately, that would not be an accurate description of the authority of the council.
does
I
somebody have
second.
that- hang on, can somebody easily share a screen? I can't, I'm flipping between too many right now. I just think it's important for commissioners and for the public's sake that it's up so we know what we're voting upon.
You have it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's number 2, the one that takes section 2.10 and adds into the legislative authority being in the county council, the executive authority being in the county council. And I think Randy has very well described to us why the executive authority is not in the county council. The county council does have all of the residual executive duty that are not assigned to all of the elected officials now. And if we have a new elected official coming down the way, that one also. And that's quite a bit that is carved out. And so the only executive authority that remains in the council is the residual executive authority.
Okay.
So
and
that's incorrect. That would be incorrect.
So let's stop sharing screen if we can. Sorry, Dave, I'm going to have you toggle a little bit on this.
That's fine. It's great.
Okay, so I think I saw a second with Anne-Marie Shanks. So there's a motion and a second. Is everybody clear on the motion? Okay, discussion. David.
I'm going to vote no because 2.10, the suggested amendment could easily be modified to lay out that the county council has the executive authority enumerated in section 2.31.
Okay.
That's all it's needed because it clarifies for the person who picks this up and reads it for the first time that it does have authority, legislative authority, and it does have enumerated executive authority spelled out in 2.31.
For the 7 people outside of this commission and Randy's office who have ever read the charter, yes.
Well, then that
Sorry, I'm sorry.
argument could be made for everything we're doing.
Yes, yes,
It's
yes.
it's crossed all of our minds. Don't worry.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any other comments under discussion on the motion on the table?
Call the question.
Could you repeat the motion, please?
The motion is to reject number 2.
To reject the recommendation from the subcommittee to add executive authority, which is spelled out in number 2, and we just shared the screen.
Mhm.
Okay. All those in favor of rejecting the recommendation from the subcommittee, please raise your hand. Okay, and Olivia, are you counting with me or Catherine?
2,
Okay,
4, 5, 6,
I
7,
guess.
we got it.
8, 9. Okay.
Yeah, okay. All those opposed? I see David. I see no other opposed. Any abstentions? Olivia is an abstention. Okay, and the chair voted aye. Okay, so we have majority in favor with David Dellendorf voting opposed and Olivia abstaining. Okay, the motion carries. So that one is rejected. Do we want to keep going down? Bob, you said the second motion.
Thank you. My second motion would be to accept number 4, number 10 and 11 together, and number 13 with the following changes. In number 10 and 11.
Could we share the screen again?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Dave, do you mind toggling over again? Thank you very much. So let's go.
In number 10 and 11, taking out immediately and putting in promptly. And then in number 13, I would just add the word "the" in front of auditor. The auditor shall be responsible, and and then with the county manager. It keeps the language going that we've been using throughout, which is not, truncated sentences.
Is there a second to this motion, or are folks okay with it being, well, I'll wait till there's a second. Second from Janet. Okay, are folks okay with combining those 11, 12, and 13?
Yeah, I was wondering.
Forward. Okay, under discussion, Jane.
The language that was provided by Randy in terms of amending or writing somewhat differently the amendment, I thought was good language, but that's not the language we're looking at. So I think he provided some revised language that his office suggested would be better. But so I'm not clear if we're voting on, okay, I don't know, if we're voting on the language that's in the table and we're not looking at also the language that was provided by Randy's office, I see a bit of a problem there.
So to that point, I was actually, thank you, Jane. I was going to ask Dave, do you have handy the memo from Randy? Because Randy's language actually shows what was recommended and then his suggested change. So that might be handy. Or if Olivia or Catherine, if you have that handy.
I have it if you want to.
Yeah, please. Janet, why don't you share that screen if you could?
Hold on.
I think that would be really helpful. And then I'll go to Patty quickly.
I just got to find it.
Not that you have to be quick, Patty, but just that.
I have it here.
Okay, my question is that, we can vote for these things, the spirit of what we want, but I don't know that that's what's going to end up being what is put on the ballot, because they're going to be worked with the legal team and with other people. So I'm not sure that we need the exact language to be voted on right now. That's just my question.
I think that is correct. I would say that if we, however, adopt something that's closer, then it gives the prosecutor and us the direction that we need. But you are absolutely correct. This will likely not be the final language. There will still be some changes back and forth before it's finalized. But I think this gives better direction if possible. Yeah. So that's the section there. If folks can see it. No, that's, composition. Is that it?
No, the underline is what's in the proposed by Dave's team.
And Jane or Janet, can you enlarge?
Hold on. Oops, nope. Wait.
Wait for it. Better, thank you.
And Bob, what you were suggesting, this isn't the same. Bob, where was your suggestion for your second?
In 410, I didn't actually have a suggestion. I didn't realize, I didn't make note of any changes that had been recommended.
I was going to say, we're not on the right section. If we can go to what section
Roll
was
it
it,
down.
where we were saying promptly instead?
That was 2.60.
Yeah, there it is. Okay. And what Jane's point was that Randy has added a little bit more, but his main point was that promptly is far better than immediately.
Mhm.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Chair. I thought we were talking about the one below that. But on this one, I think we need to hold on doing on a motion on this one because the second sentence there is not finalized yet. And so for 2.60 on miscellaneous appointments, we still need to do some tweaking. I thought we were talking about the budget, I think it was 7.10. I thought that's what Bob was referring to. So
He
for this
referred to
one,
both.
okay, but for this, you're right, David, he did. For this one, Mr. Chair, I would suggest we hold on 2.60 until we can get congruence between.
Totally agree.
Okay, thank you.
No problem with removing that from the motion.
So what was the section that you're looking at adding the language then, the first part of the motion?
The section, well, wait a minute. Wasn't it, which section was it? You just stated that you wanted to remove, wasn't it 2.60?
2.60 for
Yeah,
reasons that Jane just stated and Randy commented on earlier, there needs to be a little bit more work on that before it's moved forward. And so I think that should be tabled for now.
Okay. Well, section 7.20 is the, I just wanted the words the added before the titles of auditor and county manager. So you don't say consultation with county manager, you say consultation with the county manager. You say the auditor at the beginning.
Yes.
At the very beginning, and the county manager at the end of the second sentence.
Yes. And those
That's
are the
all.
kind of things, to Patty's point. I mean, we can let this motion move going forward. I think the typo side of this, the grammatically correct editing side of it is something that we can keep working on too.
So I think that means we remain, in my motion remains number 4 and then number 13, which are 4.10 and 7.20.
Okay, Maureen, let's stop sharing screen for a sec.
Well, okay, I had a question on it.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. I can say it out loud, and I'm pointing to Dave Anderson. You have in here that that boards and commissions will be notified immediately, advised in writing of its decision. Do you have knowledge that they're not being done? I mean, have you talked to who? Where did that come from?
That's not in the motion. Point of order. That's not in the motion.
So,
Mr. Chair.
This is in number 4.
There was some suggestion that there is a limited, that the process is not as robust as we'd like it to be. There has been anecdotal evidence that that people are not being formed, that they were passed over for being appointed to a commission. What?
I'm sorry, I was telling David I'll get to him in a minute. Go ahead, Dave.
David, okay. We're finding that there has been times when people have been informed through the newspaper, read that they were not accepted as an applicant to the newspaper. Sometimes people have been found that they were appointed but did not realize it. And so we just want to make sure this is clean and clear, and that there is a formal process, and that it's inviting for people to want to apply, and they can see that there is a process for them to actually serve the county.
Good. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
David.
Thank you.
David Dellandor.
What Maureen and Dave are referring to is not in section 4. It's in section 10 and 11. And Bob already withdrew his motion regarding 10 and 11. So I think this discussion about promptly or whatever is completely irrelevant. The motion was unrelated to this. So Bob, can we go back to the beginning? It's confusing when there's a motion and then there's another motion and everything. What is on the table? What is the motion exactly that we've ended up with? Could you clarify?
Sure. This motion was to accept as an amendment to the charter, the proposal made under what we see as number 4 here,
Which is, give us the.
which
second.
is 4.10.
Thank you.
And then to go to down to what is enumerated as number 13, which is section 7.20.
David, let him finish and then we will get back to whether or not we should split the question.
And accept it with the words the before the two titled persons.
Okay, and I think what David was going to say, which I was going to raise earlier, is I think it's better if we split these questions.
Yeah, one at a
fine.
time.
That'd be
and not have a
fine.
motion that combines several sections.
So my first motion is to accept what's enumerated as number 4, which is the part that deals with section 4.10.
And you're
Second.
saying,
I'll second.
okay, you have a motion and a second under discussion.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
David Dellendorf, sorry, Sharon. And I have a clarification. When you say accept, are you saying accept the committee recommendations or accept Randy's recommendation?
I'm just looking at the committee's recommendation. I have no problem with Randy telling us later that, hey, that
And
doesn't
actually, I'm
work.
sorry, and I'm looking at Randy's memo, and he clarified that the proposal does not present any legal concerns.
Okay.
Proceed.
All right.
So okay, so the motion is to accept the committee recommendation on section 410. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any abstentions? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries with unanimous support.
Well, I now move for the acceptance of the amendment dealing with section 720 with the slight alterations which can be made later of the word the.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
That's Janet Brownell second. Okay, any discussion? Jane?
Just to refer again to the suggested revision that was offered by the PA's office to that particular proposed amendment of the governance committee. So that's what Janet was trying to share with us on the screen, was the language that the PA's office suggested as a replacement to what was proposed by the governance committee. So I think we need to look at that.
So Bob, we had that up. We can share it again. There was a lot of nodding when Randy presented that and his rationale for that. And so is that, Bob, what your motion literally says is to accept the committee recommendation. We have some slight alterations from our prosecutor, which seem to be valid and important to consider.
Are those the alterations that are on the let's see, this page that begun under recommendations have the two quotes at the bottom of the paragraph there. The county auditor is vested with authority to initiate the budget process, request an estimate of expenses in accordance with RCW 36.40.0.10, and prepare the preliminary budget in consultation with the county manager. That's his suggestion.
That's correct.
Yes.
I accept that as my motion, or I amend my motion to
be his recommendation. Prosecuting attorney.
Yes.
Okay. Other discussion. Kyle.
To be clear, though, that only replaces the first underlined sentence. Is that right?
That's
the rest of that.
Second consent. Who seconded the motion?
Janet.
I will second Bob's amended motion.
Your consent, okay.
Yeah.
So,
Is there more to the recommendation that I'm not seeing on here?
No,
So we have it covered. Thank you.
my belief is no.
what, if the commission, and this is a bit unorthodox during during a discussion of a motion, formal discussion of a motion. But if the commission would allow, I believe Mylene Henley is on the call. And, oh, I don't see her. Maybe I do. I just wanted to ask if there's anything in this change that she has an issue with. Is the commission okay with that, or do we want to just call the question and then she can let us know later?
Question.
Call the question.
Okay.
Call the
Okay.
question.
Okay. So all of those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Kyle Davies. Any abstentions? Dick Grout, Liz Lafferty, and I will also abstain. The chair abstains.
I want to be clear. I'm abstaining because I have lost track of what we're actually voting on. Just so you know.
Okay. All right. And
Are we still going to hear from Mylene?
we can now, or what I was thinking is we can move forward now that the motion's passed, and then she can weigh in with us.
Yeah, let's just move forward.
Yeah. So, David.
With regard to 2.60, where we, I believe, decided to defer a decision until we have clarification of what's coming out of the Justice and Equity Subcommittee. However, Kevin, you did send around this afternoon, I believe, a fleshed out section 2.60 amendment. And in that you do, instead of section the 2, which that's in there in the spreadsheet of Dave's, you do say the county council shall work to ensure that all boards, committees, and commissions maintain a diversity of membership that is representative of blah, 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 blah. So I think you've made a good effort, and I like the language you have to flesh this out to the point where I think we can actually consider a motion on 2.60. I think it would be great to get it out of the way. Now, it was recognized, though, by our committee when we talked about what you have in your, what you proposed specifically, not in the spreadsheet, but this other document, which other people may not have seen. I don't know if everybody looked at it, printed it out. I got it right in front of me.
Not everybody got it.
Okay, but it was acknowledged that we don't know what's going to come out of the other committee, and it may be different. And as Randy said, we have to be consistent. We don't want to go in two different directions. So we did discuss, and then we say, well, we said to ourselves, and we agreed that when this final amendment gets into the hands of Randy, if it's approved, that point in time, any discrepancies can be eliminated. Any conflicts, any contradictions, any inconsistencies could be removed at that time. So we're not necessarily wedded to this exact language at the end of what you proposed. But if everybody has not seen it, unless you want to put it up on the screen, then it might be difficult to vote on it at this time. But it's basically the same thing that is in the spreadsheet, except for being specific about the diversity provision.
Patty.
I was going to say that when Dave was giving his presentation, his language was different from what was on the screen. It was more inclusive. It was what you're talking about, David. But not everybody has seen that. And I think that if we did see that, that would be something we'd be able to vote on, because obviously it was worked on since then. And it sounded pretty good when he read it, but it wasn't there in front of us.
Mr. Chair, may I share a screen?
Please. And while you're doing that, Randy, just clarification, fixes like this, David's description of what took place actually is very accurate. The committee actually discussed a more thorough version, but at the end we were also, because the Justice and Equity Committee wasn't finished, we were also a little apprehensive of going forward. But this was the language that was discussed by some of us on the subcommittee in great detail. Yeah. My question, Randy, just to clarify, is if there are differences like this, is this something that after we start to move these forward that you can help us kind of finalize and clean up?
I'm glad you asked that question because it's causing me to squirm a little bit here. Okay, I work for all of you. Okay, when you act as a group, that's the message I get. And that's what I'm going to try to preserve. I am not going to wordsmith things when you take action that's down at the word level. When you see something in red line strikeout format and you are adopting it, when you see something in paragraph format, you are adopting it, that's what you are going to get. I'm going to change the form. I'm going to change the introduction and maybe put on a header and maybe a signature page at the bottom or something, but I'm not going to change your words. Your words, you get to decide. I will offer you a recommendation at this stage. And so that's why I'm doing it. But I have not seen this language. I have nothing to offer on this except to postpone it and to include it under the single subject rule with another matter, another measure in the other group.
Got it. Thank you very much. So with Randy's clarification there that whatever we adopt now it is not his job to fix this and clean it up. It's ours. Is me summarizing a little more bluntly what we just heard from our prosecutor. I would strongly recommend that we postpone discussion of 2.60 until we have further information from the Justice and Equity Commission so that we make sure the language is similar. I think this language meets what I'm on both committees. So I think that this meets the intent, but we don't have that clarification yet.
Okay, agreed.
And Jane, I saw Jane had her hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I mean, I do have a question for Randy of clarification, and that is, in other charters I have looked at where they have a non-discrimination clause, I have seen other sections of those charters refer to the specific non-discrimination clause by number. And so my question for you, Randy, is may it possibly be the case that a section under an article that speaks to non-discrimination makes reference to the specific section that talks about non-discrimination? Because I'm wondering if that could make it cleaner, and I have seen that in multiple other county charters. So you may not have an answer to that question yet, but it might be better to discuss offline. But this is why I suggested we put this on the table for now until we clarify that.
I can answer your question.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Randy.
You don't when you look at those other charters, you don't know when that cross-reference was put in. Okay. And so what I'm talking about is including the cross-reference with the original language, the non-discrimination language, all at the same time. So it's one measure. And it's not necessary that those things were adopted at different times. Perhaps they were, and they may even been different years. When you see it consolidated like that, you're not sure. So my recommendation is just to keep topics together, subjects together, even if it means different, it'll lead to an amendment to this section at a later time.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Randy. Okay, and Tom, you had your hand up, or at least I wrote down your name a while ago and I didn't get to you, and I'm sorry if I missed you. I can't even remember now. I hope I'm not the only one totally confused at this point.
Since Randy just spoke a little bit about it, I'm curious to know how many of these would be separate propositions. My mind is boggling at the ballot now, thinking about all these propositions. But then I know that they can get combined by subject, but how many are we talking about today, for example?
I can speak to that, and then if Randy wants to comment again, but I forwarded an email exchange between Randy and I a short while back where a question had come up specifically about that. And what the clarification was kind of where there's a number of small edits and such, could those all be, one question? And the answer was yes. I think one of the things Randy was just saying is that one of the reasons you want these individual sections to be able to stand alone is other sections may not pass because they may be different ballot titles. The final thing I would say is we have not defined how many amendments we are putting forward. That's the process we're beginning right now. And we will look to Randy for advice on which of those could be under one ballot title, which of those have to be separate ballots. Not ballot titles, but ballot questions. Randy?
Part of your consideration at the time of creating the propositions will be the subject matter. And if you have 15 different matters, you may say that's too many. There's fatigue at that point, and you may choose to withdraw some of those requests just for the sake of avoiding the fatigue.
Yep.
So you're going to have to pick and choose, and that's part of your decision making.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And the other option, and Randy's also clarified this for us too, we could also split it. We could also say that we're putting a number of them on for this November, and then we don't conclude our work until December, which doesn't mean we have to continue to work at the pace we are now. And then some would go on the following November's ballot as well. And that is also something that is within our discretion. I saw Bob, I think you put your hand down. You're good. Okay.
Right. It was about what you just said. Yeah.
Anne-Marie.
So I just had another question kind of along the same lines. If there's a special election in the spring, would these ever go on a special election ballot?
I don't know. I think they probably could. Randy, or?
No, the answer is no.
Really?
The charter provides for these to be voted on in the general election.
But the charter provides for, so if we wanted to, we could change that.
No. Well, you'd have to get that changed first.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, Randy. Sorry.
Chasing
the
tail.
I should be drinking something other than soda water, asking those sorts of questions. Thank you, Randy. Okay, I'm going to go back to Dave for original presentation from your committee. Are there any other motions left that have not been tabled from your committee that we need to put forward?
No, not that I see.
Okay.
Well,
okay.
There are two thoughts. There were two things we thought that should be transferred to comments that would be put forward, and kind of state those are down with we were under the impression that we're going to do just proposed amendments today, but there were two issues that we thought that should be recommendations to council. One is that the budgets be made available online. It was hard to find the budget recently, some committee members thought, and also that there should be a county manager. The county manager should hire a deputy. That we talked about requiring that, but we just decided instead of micromanaging, we thought that would be something that just we would make it as a recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And so we don't have specific language on that though proposed from the committee at this point in time.
For recommendations, no.
Okay. Okay. So I would, unless others object or you object, Dave, I would like to say we table those for now. And we can revisit them if specific language comes from the subcommittee, and then we revert back to the other items that you discussed but didn't move forward, so we can know what those discussions were and what the breadth of the committee's discussions were.
Yeah.
Are folks good with that?
Yes, I'm good with that.
Good. Okay. You want to share your screen on those again?
Okay. So the things that you're saying, the things we did not discuss, that we discussed, we said we should not move forward.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's get this up here. Okay. So one issue we got brought forward to us is, should we increase the number of council members to 5? And there was some discussion about that. And there was a feeling that that was a past commission had addressed that fairly thoroughly. And so after some discussion about that, we decided to not move forward with any kind of amendment. We had a lot of discussion about expanding public comment at the county council meetings, and whether or not there is enough public comment, whether people are feeling that they are being heard at meetings. And also there was part of the issue put forward was that they would be responsible for the council members to respond. And I think that other than courtesy, what the feeling of the commissioners was that that's not the time or place for that kind of response, that we want our counselors to be thoughtful when they're giving response to people, and we want them to be just mostly focused on listening. So that was something we passed on, proposing a amendment to. There was a issue brought up to us that we should limit the county council's existing emergency powers in terms of the time that they are allowed to have, the emergencies are allowed to exist. And I think one of the comments that was really appropriate for our committee was that when there's an emergency, the politicians need to do is just get out of the way. And I think that as far as putting that in the charter, I think that was kind of what the feeling that the governance committee had. To clarify the county council that cannot levy taxes, that was a discussion a little bit, but more that was just some research that some of our commissioners looked into, and it just became pretty clear that the council cannot levy taxes without a vote, or they have the power. I'm saying they cannot levy taxes without a vote of the people. And so that was put forward as not something we're not going to move forward as an amendment. There's a lot of discussion, and I would almost probably much of our discussion was about the ambiguities and contradictions in relationship between the county council and the county manager. We had extensive conversation about what is the actual role and the powers that the county manager has, and how do they relate to the county council. We had 4 amendments brought forward by Commissioner Gazelle, and they were really thoughtful. And then we had some interviews with the county manager, and I really appreciate the discussion we had. But ultimately, we decided to not move forward with any proposed amendments dealing with the county manager and the relationship to the county council. Evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of the county council. There was not really a sense from the governance committee that we had a way to do that, and that there were definitely not time to do that. But it was hard to see if that was something that was really appropriate for the CRC to do. So we just kind of thought that was something that we should probably move on from, and wasn't appropriate for our committee to do. Self-governance for islands. This was a interesting topic for our committee to take on and look at. We had an opinion from the prosecuting attorney's office that entered in the discussion quite a bit. Ultimately, we just decided that the current charter does not limit islands from creating self-governance, and there was debate about what is the boundaries of corporation and whether or not this is something that we want to pursue more. But ultimately, we decided that we do not want to propose any kind of amendment dealing with self-governance of islands. Background checks of applicants to citizens committees, boards, and annual, and also having your analyses for board members and committee members. This was brought up by a commissioner who was bringing it up for another citizen, a constituent, and it was a very interesting and good conversation about it. And there was a genuine concern, and I think that there was some thoughtful conversation about it, but ultimately we decided not to move forward in it. And then we made a recommendation to have be recommended that the budget be put online, and I would mention that a second ago. And we thought that voters should really have access, and citizens should really have access to the budget. And we want to make sure that there is much more transparency involved with our government in that manner.
Dave, can I comment on that?
David, let's let him get through, and then we're going to go to public comment, and then we'll go to you.
Yeah. Thank you. Require the county manager to hire a deputy. There was extensive discussion about that. Again, there was a fear that we were going to be micromanaging the county manager's office, and but there was still some extended conversation after we finished talking about that. So, but we did take a vote, and that was at the time to not go forward with a proposed amendment. The combine the county auditor and treasurer departments. That was something that we felt that another committee was addressing with the elected and appointeds, and so we did not address that. And increase the minimum requirements of I can't see my screen here. Increase the minimum requirements of meetings for county council to have from 2 to 3 or 4. The county council decides how they want to meet, and we felt that would be too invasive and over-regulating them, and that we found that they have enough time to meet. They are meeting more than those, more than about 3 times a month, and so we felt that was a little too far in micromanaging. So those are the things that we had lengthy discussion about, all of them, and we decided to pass.
Thank you very much. If you could also stop sharing your screen.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Dave. And David, sorry, but I would like to jump to public comment because originally we advertised that would start at 5:50 and we're 3 minutes late now. So I'd like to just go to that, and then we're going to come right back to you and any other questions on that report out from Dave Anderson. So if there are members of the public who would like to speak, you could please turn on your video if you're so able, and raise your hand, and I will call upon you. So I see Alexandra.
Hi, Alexandra Guy, Gorky Island. Just one comment about the public participation thing. I think this commission has set a really good example for how to interact with the public, that we can expect there to be some kind of response, that it doesn't happen in the moment, during the public comment period, but that there is some kind of structure for interaction. And what I've experienced with the county council is there are opportunities to comment, and also with the planning commission, there are opportunities to comment, but there isn't any structure for when the commissioners will respond, or how they will respond, or that they will respond. If I send an email to the county council, I never get a response. And so it just seems like it would be appropriate to create a structure that would allow some kind of response to come to people. I got your email. Thanks for, even if it was an automated thing. But right now there just isn't any structure that allows or provides for the council to respond when people make comments. And so we have no acknowledgement that they're even considering what we have to say, that they heard what we have to say, or like you, that they decided, okay, these are the comments, we're going to put them into, assign them to subcommittees or whatever we're going to do with them, that there is some way that the public knows I do have input. So that would be my comment about the governance issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your input and for continuing to participate. Others, I see Brenda.
Yes, thank you. I applaud your diversity intent and progress. Thank you so much. In regard to the evaluating strengths and weaknesses of the county council, if not you, who would citizens go to say, we'd like to see this done, if it's not you all? And regarding the lack of separation of powers, that kind of sideswiped me. I'm appalled. I'm appalled. And I would think that would work against the intent to create greater diversity.
And Brenda, I'm sorry, I didn't clarify it in the beginning. Could you please introduce yourself and tell us where you're from?
Lopez Island. Brenda Astorino. I live on Lopez.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are there others who would like to comment this evening? Any others? I don't see any. I don't think I'm missing anybody. Okay, I will close public comment, and thank you very much to both of you for your input this evening. And we're going to go back to you, David. And sorry for the pause, David, and then Bob.
No problem. I just want to point out that the budget is available online. That's not, so this was not an accurate criticism, whoever made it. It is available. It may be difficult to find like everything else, but it's there. I just also wanted to say, Alexandra, thank you for making that comment. I'm not sure if any of the subcommittees dealt with that. We didn't. Perhaps it was not assigned. It was not on the original list, the best of my knowledge, for our group. But I think it is a very worthy thing that we take into consideration. What's not going to happen, however, is that the county council is going to respond in real time at the meeting. That just can't happen because it just bogs things down. But a response within a certain period of time, promptly is a word that Randy used, I think is certainly appropriate. And I don't know how we could possibly, given it didn't come out of our committee, how we add that to our deliberations, Randy. I'll leave that up to you. One other thing about evaluate strengths and weaknesses, that was a very confusing comment that came out of a public forum. And we didn't know whether it meant evaluate the structure of the county council or evaluate the individuals of the county council. Certainly evaluating the structure is part of our responsibility. That's what we're doing in this whole process of reviewing the charter. And with regard to evaluating the individuals, if that was the intent, that's something we just didn't want to go there. And we have new council members. How do you evaluate new council members? So we did give that consideration, but there were various reasons not to go forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would clarify that my understanding of our motion that we passed for 5 votes is if there were 5 members of this commission who wanted to add some language on feedback from the council or response from the council, then we could revisit that on an agenda after we get through the subcommittees. And I appreciate what you said there, David. Bob. You're muted, Bob.
I had 2 items on Chairman Anderson's. We didn't deal with this list, or we chose not to bring something forward list. One of them was, well, first, looking at number 6, I remain confused about the issue of levying taxes. What I heard said was, well, the council doesn't have the ability to level taxes. And I look right here at at Article 2, Section 2.30, subsection 2, that states this: the county council shall exercise its legislative power by adoption and enactment of ordinances and resolutions. It shall have the power to, A, levy taxes, appropriate revenue, and adopt budgets for the county. Do they or do they not have that authority? Because I've seen contrary things in case law and in statutory law, and I'm scratching my head going, what? Do we get to levy taxes or not?
We have, including myself, who would chime in on this, but I'm going to go to Paul. I saw his hand first, and then Tony.
They're responding to my...
You're still muted, Paul.
Oh. Muted.
Sorry. So, Bob, council members do have the ability to levy taxes, as do all government agencies, including all the 25 different taxing districts we have within the county. They have to do that within their perimeter, though. However, they just can't say, well, we want this many taxes. They are limited by a 1% increase each year. They can, if they decide not to take those 1%, they can accumulate it. And then at a future time they need it, it's there for them to use. But to answer your question, they and all governmental agencies have the ability to levy taxes.
Yeah. Thank you. That answers that one.
Yeah.
My second question.
Hold on. Tony, you had your hand up. You're fine.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This was an item that the question to me was section item A was levy taxes. It felt to us, or to me, that this is a power that should be checked with the voters. But if you look at the previous paragraph, number 1 item under 2.3, it just follows the state constitution. So we felt that this was all covered, and they can levy taxes with the support of the public.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
Bob.
you, Mr. Chair.
My second item, and I feel very strongly about this, I got comments when I was first elected to this position from the public about this, and that had to do with the responsiveness of the council. This was number 3 on this list: responsiveness to the council and the ability to go to the council and talk. And I, in response to that, I wrote up a little short suggestion and I sent it in. Kevin, you may have seen it. I don't know what committee, if any, it ended up with. And it talked about having a comment period where the person got the right to talk for a certain amount of time, and that he had the right to hear a response from at least one councilman. Now, I personally do not think that is too much to ask of a councilman. I mean, we everybody else responds to everybody else. We respond to each other. We think about what the comment was made to one another and respond. The people are, I know this, people who go there and make comments are very frustrated when they go, thank you, okay, next one, and they end up thinking, I might as well have been talking to the wind. And that is very destructive of the democratic process. I would like to see something implemented where the council had to hear these comments and respond to them.
Tony?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to respond to that, Commissioner Connell. One of the issues with this is that there are a lot of sections, or at least a couple of sections in the charter, that talk about how the council is in charge of its own affairs, essentially. So if that's something we want to recommend, it could be a recommendation. I doubt that we can add that as a charter item, because how do you force a council member to respond? There is no authority other than the ballot box to force them to respond. But we can make that as a recommendation, if you will. And the charter commissioners agree to it, that the council members should respond promptly using Randy's previous term. So I don't know how we can put that in the charter as an amendment. Thank you.
Jane? And then Maureen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner O'Connell, we did discuss this quite a bit, actually, and it was helpful because amongst us on this committee, we have all had fair amount of experience working on boards or experiencing sitting in on board meetings, et cetera. And it can present challenges for members of a body to have to respond in the moment to something that's said by the public. And I shared the experience that we have had on Lopez Island recently, when sort of the rules of conduct, so to speak, evolved in our Lopez Island School Board district, and a new chair that took on that role. She decided that public comment, of course, would continue, but the board obligated itself to respond to the person who made a comment. So if they wanted the board to respond to them after the meeting, then the school board committed to responding to the person in writing or picking up the phone or whatever. And they said, your point is taken, your comment is noted, a representative of the school board will get back to you. And so that I tell you, it made it a much smoother process for both board members and the public, frankly. And so I think something like that could be valuable, but I agree with Tony's point, putting it in the charter does not seem feasible.
Okay, I've got Maureen and then Liz, and then I'd like to try and move us on because we still have 2 items under new business.
Okay, I'll be very brief. I would suggest to the public and to the commissioners that for years, many people have complained about not feeling satisfied with the exchange in the open public comment time. But you can always ask a county council for it to take a meeting with you. And these days it's an electronic meeting, but they will meet with you, and that you just have to ask for it, and then sometimes get a little pushy for it, but it can happen.
Liz.
I'm in favor of making it as easy, as comfortable, and as frequently as we can from the public. I'm not in favor of the necessarily responding in the minute, but I would propose instead of that we set up a new system in terms of the public speaking, have the first of a meeting and at the close of the meeting. And if we've got a lot of people, which would be a great problem to have, if you've spoken at the beginning, and you're going to speak again at the end, you would, take that last position in terms of the time that's allotted to do that. And that also would accommodate people's working schedules. It would accommodate, then I think one of the things I hear is that they don't feel like they're influencing the conversation until after the fact. And so us listening at the front end of a conversation, taking what they're saying to heart, then they'll hear it reflected in the overall conversation. And I think that's of, premium importance.
I saw another hand and I missed it, Bob.
I heard what my two Lopesian fellow commissioners had to say there and took that to heart, especially what Jane was saying about the possibility of doing this another way and having a later response. But I do think it would be a good idea to memorialize that in some way. I think we ought to take some kind of action regarding that. And I would ask you, Mr. Chair, if we could ask if there are 5 people who agree with that, or is it a dead issue?
So what I was going to say is the same way we've done this other times. Instead of bringing up a vote at a time like this, what I was going to say is I think Tony made a good point. And I would also say, Liz, to your last point, it's really important that the council be able to set their own agenda, their own meeting agendas. And so structuring their agenda through the charter, I think, is a little bit out of our scope. And so I think there's a little bit of research that we need to do on this too. But what I would say is if we also have some language on the appointment to boards and committees that folks have tentatively looked at and liked that is similar to this. So if folks want to discuss this further, what I would ask is that you email Olivia and I, and if we get 5 emails, then I will raise this as a potential for a vote. But I also want to caution us that I think we're on the edge of what is our scope versus what is the legislative branch's scope for our county and setting their own agenda and such. And we'll go to Patty.
I just wanted to make a comment that in the meetings that I've taken minutes for, and there was public comment, I always included the public comment as much as I could in those minutes.
Yep. I think that's really important, actually. Yeah. Any other comments on this subject? Liz, please.
Briefly, just in support of what Maureen said, is if we've heard for years from the public that they don't feel heard, then we should figure out something to do. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, I was wondering why I wasn't following the chat and I just saw my email pop up. So I was like, why? So, okay, before we move into new business, I just want to comment in all seriousness that David Dellendorf, I hope you can hear this, but I think that is an absolutely wonderful family photo. It's a beautiful photo. Okay. So under new business, we have two issues. One is a vote on ranked choice voting, and the other is that Olivia and I have found a second staff person for us that we're really excited about. And so why don't I dive into that? So Kyle Loring, who lives on San Juan Island, is willing to help us with the research and drafting. And actually the discussion we just had, the back and forth we had earlier regarding our need to kind of cross-mend some of our amendments and such before they get to Randy is telling me even more. And then I've also heard from 3 different committees in the last week that they really could use some, and actually now 2 more recently, that they could really use some help in researching some different issues that they're looking at and so on. And so the nicest thing is that with our budget, after we keep Catherine through the end, which we approved last time, which is fantastic. And thank you again, Catherine. We have $4,900 and he has agreed that he would be willing to do it for the remainder of our work for the $4,900 as a flat fee, which is just fantastic. And I can tell you, I've actually worked with him on a project last year doing very similar work for the US Congress. He is really good at drafting. I mean, just exceptional. We wanted to bring that for your attention and move forward with that hire, and unless there's any concerns or any issues or something that any members have. Okay, Dick, please.
I have experience working with Kyle as a researcher and a writer, and I wholeheartedly support this. And the fact that we could get him to do that for $4,900, that's well below his going rates. I mean, that's terrific.
Yeah, excellent. Emery, you're muted.
I would second what Dick said. I think we're really on to something here, and we should move quickly to secure him.
Yeah, and if we can, I mean, his contract, we'll get it in place as quickly as possible, but he's able to start helping as of, as soon as tomorrow. But we want to talk to James Wolf at HR to make sure that everything's legit there. Jane, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would support this as well. At the same time, I also wanted to acknowledge and thank our prosecuting attorney for his inputs today and how quickly that was provided. And so, I think this is it was neat to see the prosecuting attorney's office, come back and help us massage stuff a bit. And there's so much more of that needs to be done. So I think it'll be helpful to have someone, not us, who can help us, dive in a little more, throw stuff back to us that we can then get to Randy in a timely and appropriate way. And anyway, I feel there's a little confusion around how all that's happening, but I think I am very grateful that for our Justice and Equity Committee, we can get a little more research support. And so Randy's office, though, clearly is helping us in an important way as well, as we witnessed today. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so, and then just to move forward, and I also want to clarify, Mylene put it in the chat. I believe that this would be a contractor position and not an employee, but I'm going to reach out. I'm going to have that conversation with James and the county, and they're going to clarify that for us. So moving on, ranked choice voting. 5 or more of you have emailed me. And again, we're not going to have the discussion on ranked choice voting. I just want to clarify, this is just simply the formality, the procedural process of putting it back on the agenda to come up before the full Charter Review Commission. If there's some minor comments, we can have that, but we really don't want to get into a discussion of ranked choice voting. I don't think members are prepared for that tonight. What we want to do is have a vote. And so just to remind members, our process that we've put in place is if 5 or more commissioners vote for a topic to be put on the agenda to be discussed before the full commission, that it will be accomplished. And so what I would ask is I would accept a motion to put ranked choice voting on the Charter Review Commission agenda for a future meeting.
I'll second that.
Wait, I didn't even see who the first was. So Anne Marie is making the motion, and Liz Lafferty has seconded. Okay. Under discussion, Bob. Sorry, you know what? David had his hand up first. David, were you voting or did you?
I was going to motion, then I was going to second, and now I'm going to defer to Bob.
Okay, great. Thank you. Bob, you're muted.
Provided he unmutes himself.
I have a question. I may have misheard, but I thought you said just a moment ago, Kevin, that if 5 or more people sent you notification that they wanted this on the agenda, that it would go on the agenda.
No.
And now you're saying we have to vote. 5 or more people would authorize a vote to see whether or not it would go on the agenda. That's an additional step.
So we cannot take action via email or by sending me emails. That would, under the Open Public Meetings Act, it wouldn't be official anyway. But the other thing is the full commission has to be present for a vote. So the way we structured it, the suggestion I had put out there was that you email me so that I know. I don't want to bring up an item if there's not 5 votes. If there's not 5 votes, if 2 or 3 of you email me and I don't hear from anybody else, and I bring it up like I have with ranked choice voting a couple meetings in a row, and I send out emails to the full commission saying, hey, this has come up. If I don't hear from others, then what I would say, instead of what I'm saying now of I would accept a motion, what I would say is I've heard from a couple of you. I haven't heard from any others. And so my intention is not to bring this forward. And then at that point, if other members said, no, I actually want that, then we could, have it. But to your specific question, there has to be a motion and a second and a vote that needs to be supported by at least 5 members.
I see. Only 5 required here.
So only 5 required here to put it on the agenda. And I would love it if items like this that are coming back to the agenda actually have more than 5, just to see what kind of level of support there is. But the process we put in place is that it does not take a majority to put this on the agenda. Now, to clarify, the reason is that we are not taking action on ranked choice voting. We are solely discussing whether or not it can be on the agenda. For any action to be taken on this item or any other item that would become an amendment, it will take a majority of the full commission.
So Kevin, we're not, by voting yes here, we're not indicating we're in favor of ranked choice voting. We're indicating we're in favor of discussing it.
That's right. That is right.
I got it.
I got it. So this is what it would be commonly known as a procedural motion. So we are voting whether or not we want to proceed or we want to move forward with this at this point, only for discussion, not for action. Okay.
I called a question.
Hey, I have my hand up.
Yeah.
Can't see it.
Yeah, Dick, go ahead.
So I just want to clarify that in doing this, we are still abiding by the agreement we made that things that got majority approval from committees come first and anything else like this comes afterwards.
Yeah, thank you, Dick. I clarified that in my email, I thought, but yes. So this by voting on this today, what it allows is for Olivia and I and Catherine to start. We're already planning agendas, 2 weeks out. And so what we get to then start putting this on a future agenda. But the intention is that we will go through the committee reports and recommendations first. There could be, and I would bring this up for discussion before I would put it forward, there could be a time where maybe a committee is, stalled on something or wants more time, and we may have some agenda time where we say, hey, let's circle back on that one subject. But the intention is that absolutely what you've said, we're going to move forward with the recommendations from subcommittees first. That's the intention, unless there's, like I said, some sort of strange situation where there's a stall or something where we can use the time. But that's the absolute intention. And again, this vote is only to put it on the agenda, not to take any action whatsoever. I saw another hand. No? Okay, Dick, David, are you gonna
call the question?
I was just gonna call the question, so awesome. Okay, unless there's any other discussion, what I'm gonna say is let's vote on this. So all those in favor. Okay, let me clarify. I've got David, Kevin, Bob, Jane Fuller, Dave Anderson, Anne Marie Shanks, Dick Grout, Olivia, Sharon, and Janet, and Liz. Am I missing anybody who voted in favor?
Me.
Patty and
Maureen.
Patty and Maureen both also. Okay, all those opposed. I see Paul Dossett, Tony Gazelle, Tom Starr, and our favorite in-house attorney. No, we have 2 favorite in-house attorneys, but yes, okay, we've got you. Okay, thank you. Okay, and then
those are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, by the way.
Oh, I do not agree with that. Any abstentions?
I'm just kidding.
Any abstentions? I don't see any abstentions. Okay, so the motion carries. So this will be on a future agenda item. And we will also make sure the public is aware when it is scheduled, not just the commission, through our regular advertising means, because I know there was a lot of interest in this. Okay, with that, unless there is any other new business, I think we are actually going to adjourn 9 minutes early, which is the first time I might have an aneurysm, guys. I got to get my blood pressure thing again.
I move to adjourn.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Is there a second? Well, that's it, Patty. Okay, we are
No,
adjourned.
I don't want to adjourn yet. No. This is too much fun. Can we continue?
It's already adjourned. Later.
Continue, Jay.
Night, Jay.